And we are back, you guys, for part three of our series on common and uncommon champions in Raid Shadow Legends that actually may be worth the investment. I probably would say these are the only ones that are definitely worth that investment, at least to five, if not six star. I am Wicked Raider 22, a beginning player in in Raid Shadow Legends. So happy that you guys have decided to join us. If you have not already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications since we do post Monday through Friday. Give you a little content, a couple of things to think about, and hey, let's create a community. I'm pretty sure there are quite a few of us newbies out there. So we have part one, went into the index and took a look at Tolarians, that top banner lords, high elves, sacred order, and barbarians. Part two, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that one, Organ tribes, lizardmen, skinwalkers, and orcs were all included. We only pulled about two champions there. We're now up to the corrupted, and I'm going to guarantee that this section is probably going to be a little bit longer than our last. So let's go into Demon Spawn. And a couple of these champions I'll actually be speaking about based on experience with them in other accounts. Not very many on the uncommon side of the spectrum. So let's just take a look at what they offer. Lemire is one of those guys. You will pull this champion probably as often as you pull champions like Soldier. Pretty common. Vicious Swipe is only going to attack one enemy 2 times. His attacks are, of course, attack and HP base. Dark Burst will attack one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing a bomb that detonates in 3 turns. Not the most impressive for this guy, but I will say the bomb impact will add to itself a little bit. He has some pretty good scores as far as most areas in the game beyond Demon Lord and Hydra. Now, I will say this. Um, Increasing that damage multiplier by 15%, he would not be hard to book up using dupes. You will definitely get enough duplicates of this guy to take care of this first attack. And honestly, that's not bad either. I'm not really impressed with Bomb. Honestly, by the time I pull with this champion, I am most likely dragging him through to power him up on his way to becoming food. What we may do if we pull him again is see if we can keep him for a little while, book him, and kind of put him to work, at least in campaign, and see what he does. Maybe a little bit interesting. Since I've never really focused on what he does during battle, I just keep him without any artifacts on them and kind of run them. But with these kind of reviews, makes it interesting enough that we might give him a try. Green enough recommended. I could definitely see that HP and defense. These are two sets that we definitely have in our arsenal. If not, we are to a point where we can go back and run those areas in campaign to acquire them. HP percentage, of course, as far as the gauntlet and the chest plate come into play. So Lemire, I would not run him to a 5 or 6 star, but it's interesting enough to kind of hold him around. I'll put him on the maybe list. Let's just go with a maybe on that one. Incubus, they did not go too far between these two champions. Incubus, I'm assuming there's probably some relation between these two guys, but comes to us with Javelin, attacks one enemy, has a 10% chance of placing an extra hit. And then Demon Fang attacks 3 times at random, resets the cooldown on the skill if the target is killed. Now, he does have a damage multiplier of 25% on that 4-turn attack. And then, of course, we have that ability to buck this up 25, so 35% chance for the extra hit. I'm going to say his ratings are probably not very good. Incubus is not coming in as a favorite. Beyond a couple of people kind of like him in Hydra. This guy is going to be food for me. Pitker, I have pulled Pitker several times, guys, and unless you change my mind, he is food. Doesn't look bad, though. I will say that. Before we hit those reviews, Hamstring Bite attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed. You can increase that 15% to 20. Multiply that damage by 10, so go from 25 to 35. Not really impressed there. At least on the second attack, he does attack all enemies, but notice there's no cooldown for this turn. So attacks all enemies, has a 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff for one turn. His damage is based on his attack. Not really impressed with him. For Pick Her campaign is one Faction Wars and Hydra. I think in Faction Wars for Demon Spawn, you will likely have pulled a couple of champions that are a little bit better before you think about going into that faction. So I'm not really a fan. Pit Spawn is one we have pulled before. I mean, when you look at these guys' outfits, oh my gosh, like they look just all glistening, radiantly. I mean, check out, guy. Like, check out the expression there. Like, not giving it. But this kid's evil touch, he attacks one enemy. Thank you. I appreciate that. Gives a nice little 25% possibility if we're going to book him up. And then, of course, attacks all enemies, has a 25% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. It is defense based. We can take this from a 4 to a 3 with this cooldown. Maybe Pit Spawn if I am early is what I'm thinking. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people kind of have faith in them beyond Hydra. So ratings aren't bad. I would definitely say that. I honestly have used Pit Spawn as food every time I pulled them. Honestly, I probably would save one and just book up that copy of them. Use those dupes for this purpose. But as far as taking him to a 5 or a 6, it wouldn't be a high priority moment. But based on those reviews, he's the second one that's in the maybe category. Valspon, we've pulled before. I haven't really figured out what to do with her. Now, I will say this. She does do with Hellblight, attacks one enemy, has a 5% chance of placing that 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. What I don't like is the number of duplicates you need for her. That's just, oh my gosh. I mean, 7. We're going in some levels there. Even here, you're looking at 5. So Flesh Knit heals an ally by 10% of their max HP. You can get that heal up to actually a 45% of their max HP, which isn't horrible. I think a lot of people, because there's no cooldown, which would be nice. A lot of people will probably keep her for that one reason. As kind of that, beginner support champion, I could see her there. Maybe, let's see where she was. I was about to say maybe in Faction Wars. She would be a pretty niche type of champion. If you knew that Faction Wars was coming up or you wanted to kind of go in the campaign, it's a maybe for that purpose. But for this account, Valspon is a food source. So coming out, we only have uncommon for Demon Spawn. Lemure is a maybe. Pretty good rating. Pit Spawn is another one that is a maybe. If you are going into the beginning area, I'll be honest, even looking through some of these rares as we come back through, a few of these we've kind of worked with before, but those are our only 2 for Demon Spawn. All right, moving on to Undead Hordes. Now, Undead Hordes, depending on where we are, you're going to pull these guys quite often. And I'll be honest, there's probably only one champion here that I've heard a little bit about, but haven't really invested too much. And guess what? It's not going to be Death Knight. Death Knight has been food for me so far. Taking a look at that rusty sword, attacks one enemy, has a 15% chance of placing sleep debuff for 1 turn. He does have a passive payback, so 30% chance of counterattacking when hit. He's food. Death Hound is another one. This guy has been food for me each and every time. He only attacks that one enemy. He will ignore shield and block damage buffs. This can kind of be helpful. Will ignore defense if the attack is critical. Null level only attacks that one enemy, places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. And when it comes to defense, with that cooldown taking place, not really impressed with it. I can kind of think of a couple other champions that I would much rather use. I'm thinking even in faction, it would kind of be a no. They give him a little credit for Hydra, but this champion is food for me. Hellhound, they did not go very far between Deathhound and Hellhound, y'all. Color them in a little bit. Paralyze and Bite will attack that one enemy, placing a sleep debuff on the target for 1 turn when hit with a critical hit. This guy would be food. So this common area is it's not the greatest. It is not the greatest. And I'll be honest, moving up to uncommon, only one of these champions I've even heard of people taking to 5 stars. 6 is kind of pushing it. It is not Skull Squire. I can tell you that one. Skull Squire, not really impressed with the build. I mean, a little attention to detail there, kind of see where they're going. Decent little background. Main level, still that one enemy attack has a 25% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff. With the buffs and debuffs, I guess thinking about how you're building teams and what champion best serves you, just kind of depending on what you want to do, has been one of my biggest motivators. But Skull Squire for me has always been just food. Cold Grasp attacks that one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Places a freeze debuff for 1 turn if the target is currently under a decreased speed. So at least he's not either missing opportunities or throwing a little bit more out there. You can buck up these buffs. Honestly, you'll get enough, duplicates of him to book them if you ever decided. But for me, Skull Squire is full. Skelag is on that same motion, still attacking that one enemy with the freeze debuff. Blizzard is another one, attacks all enemies, which I like. Seven, 7 duplicates needed or books I don't like, but does have a 60% chance of placing a 25% decreased accuracy debuff. Decreased accuracy, not really worth it, the energy, so definitely food. Vulpine is another one. Bare Fangs will attack one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. I think they could make all of these hounds a lot more enticing if instead of maybe attacking one enemy, maybe 2, even 3 enemies, all will be better. That will make it a little bit more enticing. Even for his second attack, the Alpha places a 25% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. If you're only going to bite one person and literally put a increased attack, number one, the cooldown is cute, but buck this up to 35% maybe. And for this one, it's more so, I mean, something other than decreased defense. So Vulpine for me is food. Dead Crusader, food. It's a lot of food. Archaic Gladius, he's attacking one enemy, not really impressed. Crypt Blight attacks all enemies, which some of these can be so decent. But the first attack is so bad. At least here, Dead Crusader is coming in, attacking all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a 2.5% debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. I would love to see this 2.5 at least start at 7.5. That's one. Can you bucket up the buff, debuff? Yes, you have an opportunity to add 25% to that, which get that to 27.5, but it could do better. The amount of damage inflicted can be increased by 20%. I mean, the 75% chance of it happening is fine. I mean, hey, it is a common, but it could do better. So for me, Dead Crusader remains in the food category. Now, my girl Dhampir is the only one in this common, uncommon category for undead hordes that I've heard of anyone else thinking of taking to 5 or 6 star. Now I pulled her, guys. You will get her from shards quite a bit. I believe she's dropped in campaign as well. I may be wrong on that one. Sometimes I can and cannot remember which ones are dropped, but I want to say Dampier is on the list. She does death blow, attacks one enemy, grants an extra turn if the target is killed. And what a lot of people do with Dampier is they go in on the attack percentage and they literally will um, fix out her kits to make this 20% multiplier a big deal. And she becomes a nice little mini nuker, almost is what I'm thinking, even though it's only hitting that one enemy. But she gets that extra turn, which if you get her to a certain point early enough in your game, she can take out those first two enemies on her own. Definitely increases your chances when you're in a dungeon or in certain crypts for a lot more success. Now, I think it's all about her second attack, though, that everyone kind of respects, because it does have that cooldown ability. For Bloody Feast, she attacks all enemies, heals by 20% of the damage inflicted. So not only does she attack everyone, which you can increase that attack by 20% just by getting those duplicates, but she also heals herself um, by 20% of how much damage she's inflicted. She can drop some pretty decent numbers. Now, her ratings are kind of here and there. Spider's Den is one area I've heard a lot of people talk about her in, especially with that second attack. Campaign is another one. Dragon's Lair, if you're looking at most of your dungeons, is kind of where I was thinking about her at. All the keeps are another area. Faction Wars is another one. So all around, Dampier is a champion that if I received a copy from a shard, I would definitely lock her in. I wouldn't necessarily run her just immediately through campaign. I probably just hold her to the side and just, book her will increase her ability or upgrade her skills through the use of duplicates. And then once I did that, I probably would run her for experience wise and then ascend. But she's one of the few that actually makes the cut in this one. Last but not least, well, I got another one after this one, Death Knight. So Death Knight is another one. Rusty Sword comes back to talk to us again with that one enemy attack. Has a 15% chance of placing a sleep debuff for one turn. I'm not impressed with sleep. Out of all the debuffs, probably it's the one that I become most frustrated with. Either I will have an enemy where you place the debuff, and then when they're attacked, they come out of it, and it's like, well, can I at least get 2, 3, 4 turns with this? So this one turn definitely makes that not worth it. Everything else is a passive, so it has a 30% chance of counterattacking when hits. They're not the hardest hitters, so most people probably kind of look into it. Now, with Death Knight, this is pretty impressive, I'll be honest. Um, Gosh, it's way more impressive than I thought. With Death Knight, maybe I'm just not impressed, I'll be honest, with the sleep debuff, because I have other champions that normally do it, or I build my teams where putting an enemy to sleep is not my top priority. But I would love to kind of see. Let's look at the recommendation of what they put them in. That HP is always important. And again, same one with that set from defense with the HP percentages. A lot of, well, those are defaults, of course. But eh, uh, probably maybe in the Dampier category. I mean, guys, sometimes when I get the reviews, I figure all reviews can't be horrible. But for Death Knight, to be honest, I just can't see with the champions you pull pretty early on how that would be. But if it's one you want to lock away, keep a copy of, book up with duplicates preferred as you go, and then kind of work them into a team. Definitely worth it according to everybody else. So hey, it can be one of those. Now, Death Hound. I think we have looked at good old Death Hound. I'm pretty sure. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Were we moving in? We're moving in. Where have we moved to? Yeah, we were back at Death Knight. So out of this category, Death Knight was one. Dampier was our other one. My fault. We just reviewed him. Kept thinking I had looked at him already. But those are my only two out of this group that I would hold on to a copy. And kind of think about using duplicates to book those up. Secondary probably is Skull Squire. I kept thinking Scalag once upon a time had been talked about, but it's kind of like Skull Squire, probably really niche, depending on where your team is located. All right, moving on. Dark Elves. Oh, by far, this is my favorite Bennett group. I can definitely admit that one. Common and uncommons, hands down, one of these for me is one of my top champions so far. I think she has a huge advantage of being one of my favorite nukers in the game. But let's start with our commons. Definitely say she's not in the common category. You do have Lurker. You're going to pull this young lady quite often. Lurker is pretty simple, basic to understand. She attacks one enemy, has a 15% chance of placing that 2.5% poison. You're going to notice that 2.5% off the bat base level is kind of standard, especially in the common uncommon range. Viral arrow is just not impressive to me. So Lurker ends up being food. Her ratings definitely say the same thing. And so it's kind of where my girl is. She's going to be in that food category. Ranger. Anybody else notice? Put some paint on her, change her eye color, and call it a day. You definitely have a new champion. Ranger is another one. Pin level 1 is going to be for attacking that one enemy. Has a 20% chance of decreased speed. At this point, you have other champions that will take care of that. The multi-shot is nice, but the other champion we're about to talk about has a much stronger multi-shot. You can bring this down on cooldown to a 2-turner and then add 20% in damage. I can't see that being pretty impressive. There are a lot of other champions in this particular area that do the same skill and, of course, do it better. Mage Killer. I love how this girl looks. Like, clean. And then purple's my favorite color. Blue mixed in there, a little pinkish. Oh, we are getting it. But she is given. But my girl has a single attack. And she only attacks one enemy. Has a 10% chance of putting the target skills on cooldown. For Harry, I'm tempted to say that if you increase the chance of putting a target skill on cooldown, I can think of a couple of places where this was like 50%, 75% chance. That would be kind of impressive. The multipliers are all dealing with damage, so you can increase that by 20% since she is attack base. But the other thing is, when you look at her HP, she's one of those, even early game, she's hard to keep alive. And your healer, your support, your reviver, whatever you have or want to call them, was going to spend a lot of their energy, a lot of their turns, including her in the rotation. And for that reason, Mage Killer, for my personal account, and a lot of times for this account, is automatic food. And yeah, beyond a little bit higher rating in Hydra, it's kind of the same feeling for her. Love the aesthetic, but not impressed with the kit at all. Now, my girl Sniper, this girl right here, this girl right here, man, Sniper should not be an uncommon champion. Sniper is good enough of a nuker. This girl can go hard. And I know, guys, you have Elhain as a starting champion. Some people say Elaine. I just said Elhain, but on the starting champion level has the same skill. And I'm talking about Rain of Arrows. I know that this looks like a ton of books, and it is. I mean, this is 7 in, attacks all enemies 2 times, which I love. I have seen this girl kick out damage on some accounts. On a personal end, I am probably level 46, 47 on my other account. And right now she's dealing maybe 8, 9, 10,000 units of damage per hit with this attack. There are some issues in auto in certain areas. She will not go into the second attack, but I've had moments where she will actually go into it, come back, and go into it again. Her first attack is a double shot, so she does attack that one enemy 2 times, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. fills his champion's turn meter by 15%. And you'll notice that she will boost quite a bit. The more you ascend her, the better this champion can become. Hands down, I actually used this champion as food on my first account and was in tears, guys. There's a video about it. It was such a struggle for me to relinquish both Sniper and War Priest. I was so excited when I pulled her again from a shard, just ecstatic. And I have since pulled another dupe of her and used it for upgrading skills, but lock her in, place some worthy, and I mean absolute worthy artifacts on this girl, and she will not disappoint you. I have rolled toward beginning, mid game with her, and I am more than pleased with how she runs on a team. I used her in my first account probably the first 2-3 weeks exclusively as a member of my top four. I have since moved her to one of my key members on my second team. When you get, for example, a Diabolus, if you have a Deliana on your team, if you have an Elhain, I will run her with them because this multi-enemy attack is more than worth it. There are also moments if you run her with Eris, they will go multiple times. Put her in counterattack gear. She's pretty impressive. I have her, I believe, in perception gear as well. So as you guys can tell, Sniper is an absolute number one top. Lock her in, ascend her, and get her fully equipped. Her ratings do not lie. They do not lie. So I would lock her in. If you've eaten her, for example, guys, I promise you, you will likely pull her again. When you do see my girl come through, make sure you keep her. Redeemer. Redeemer is another one. Now, I recently pulled Redeemer. I know that she was added into the game not too long ago. Not a highly reviewed champion. So let's look at her kit. Split level attacks one enemy, places a 25% increased attack buff on this champion for one turn. Other champions do the same. And then Elven Blade attacks one enemy. Not impressed. Has a 50% chance of placing a 2.5% debuff 2 turns. Standard poison debuff. Not impressed that it's only one enemy being attacked, but my girl is kind of looking, she's looking kind of solid. Beyond faction wars, when using Spider Den, she doesn't have a multiple attack. Fire's Night will likely be a little bit much for her. Her HP can look pretty good. Her speed, she's a little slow. So I would definitely add a percentage on her speed. Redeemer is not a top, I must keep you kind of elf. She hasn't really made it into my vault either. So not impressed. Would not upgrade her. Most definitely not to 5 or 6 star. Heart Piercer, you're gonna pull her all the time. If you don't pull a Heart Piercer on a regular basis, I would love to know when you started your account because this is one champion that I have pulled several times. Perforate, she's going to attack one enemy. You can book that up for 20%. Sight in, so attacks one enemy if the hit is critical, places a 25% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. You can add that 1 turn cooldown, but Heart Piercer for me is food. Lurker, this is another one. Don't you guys just love it? More makeup, less makeup. Um, boy, those first three, all those bottoms are my favorite. 1, 2, 3. I promise you. The pictures maybe look different, but their bodies look absolutely the same. Knight's Revenant will be our last one for this part 3 of the series. If you haven't had a chance, don't forget to go back and look at part 1 and part 2. But only 4 champions here. Thrall is one of those. I pulled my boy. Yeah, Thrall is food, guys. He has this one little attack. Attacks one enemy, has that 5% chance of placing an extra hit. You can increase his damage by 25%. Not a bad multiplier. Buff debuff chance you can increase by 10% as well to get that up to just increase the ability, but not impressed. I would definitely make Thrall food. Moving to the uncommon, and they only have 3 cultists. I've pulled 1 or 2 times, tax 1 enemy 2 times. This is also pretty common with a lot of your barbarians. So as you're building your teams, make sure you go back and revisit their skills. You don't want too many champions overlapping each other in ability. He also has toxic miasma, so attacks all enemies, has a 25% chance of placing a 2.5% poison debuff. So notice both himself and 2 or 3 of our dark elves all have that poison debuff. It's not necessarily to make it, so repetitive on a team. So for me, cultist is food. Ad monitor. Now, ad monitor looks different. They put a little energy into my boy here. Not bad at all. Not bad at all, actually. But looks can be deceiving. A lot of books, a lot of duplicates needed. Attacks 1 enemy with shield wall. Places a shield buff on this champion for 1 turn equal to 10% of the damage inflicted. So he's going to protect himself first. Places a 50% ally protection buff on a target ally for 2 turns. So he's going to pick 1 person and place that ally protection. You can bump this down to a 2-turn cooldown. I wonder if that second, yeah, it's kind of what I'm thinking. It's probably going to be the second attack that a lot of people are valuing. But honestly, because you're only putting it on that 1 ally, I think you could do better. At Monitor, you would be food. I think you have been food for me so far, but I think that kit could be a little bit better. Herald is another one. This guy attacks 1 enemy, has a 15% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff. And for Unholy Grace, that second attack places a 30% increased critical rate buff on all allies for 2 turns, and it only has a cooldown. If it has a cooldown or 2 cooldowns available, and if you could get this from 30 to maybe 50%, that would be kind of impressive. But Herald, for me, Harold is going to be at that food level. So no one from Knights Revenant is kind of touching our spirit. Of course, we ran for Sniper in the Dark Elf. We had Lemire. So maybe 3 or 4 that we kind of pulled from the corrupted area. Actually, fewer than I thought. I think there are more rares and epics in this area that a lot of us have really connected with. But if you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate you most definitely. Be sure to subscribe, guys. Don't forget to come back for part 4, where we finish up with dwarfs and shadowkin, and then we'll throw in a couple of more tips. I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good one.